tell us a little bit about yourself and what sort of excites you in the interface of AI and cybersecurity?
In the last 7 years, I've been working for Silverforte. It's a cybersecurity startup. And as you mentioned, I've been leading the AI, machine learning, data science, and cybersecurity teams. And for me, the biggest challenge of the intersection between AI and cybersecurity is usually when you try to solve AI problems. The fuel for AI models is data. And cybersecurity, in particular, it's very hard to collect data because of compliance, because of privacy. So you need to be very creative about how you build models, how you collect data, and you need to use your experience in cybersecurity to do that. It's a great challenge, but I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see a huge progress in this area.
I would love to hear more about how AI is impacting cybersecurity and all kinds of digital risk. From your perspective, what is new in this space? What are the biggest challenges business leaders are facing?
The biggest challenge leaders facing in this area is the human factor. Most of the breaches, most of the exploits are caused by human mistakes. For instance, if I buy a new tool that's supposed to block access to my network from specific IP addresses, but I configure it wrong, it's my fault. It's not the tool's fault. If one of my employees opens a phishing email and click on the link and by that grants a hacker access to the network, it's a human fault. And it can be physical thing. If someone just enter my office and steals one of my computer, it happens more than you might think. It's a human factor. And as I said, it's by far the most common reasons why organizations are breached or attacked.
Based on what I have seen, the hackers are also becoming more creative these days in terms of what kind of vulnerabilities they are exploring. Right? One thing that happened seems to me more and more frequently over the last few years was this what we'll call a supply chain related risk.
Yeah.
Do you see more this type of risk?
So it's keep happening, and in my opinion, it will keep happen. About a year ago, I think around May 2023, a hacker group named Clop breached more than 2,000 organizations, a lot of them in the UK and big ones like the BBC, the British Airlines, Boots. And what they did is they used public software for transferring files called MoveIt. They found what we call zero-day vulnerability in this software, and 0 day means that it's a vulnerability that was not known to human till that day. So hackers basically found...
They're the first ones to
find it. And they exploited that vulnerability, and basically every organization who had this software, MoveIt software, was vulnerable. Whatever their size, whatever the industry, and what the hackers managed to do, they stole more than, I think, around 60 million national insurance numbers, bank details. And it's not only the organization's problem. It's my problem as well if my national insurance number is held in one of those organizations. The organizations basically now need to deal with a ransom case because they were asked for a ransom. But I think the main takeaway from these kind of cases is that no one is safe. I mean, everyone use third-party tools and use external vendors' services, and it means that everyone is vulnerable, and it's just a matter of time. So I think for organizations, what they need to do is they just need to prepare for this day.
So it's probably good to take a layered approach, or what we call defense in depth.
Yeah.
Right. To protect your most sensitive data, spend time understanding what is your most critical business process, or what is your most sensitive data. I remember probably a couple of years ago, the chip maker NVIDIA faced a data breach. A lot of their employee information was exposed. right? Which of course is horror. It's horrible. But I think if you think from NVIDIA's perspective, their most sensitive data is probably their R&D data.
Yeah.
Right? If their new generations of chip design is breached, then that's going to be a disaster for them. Traditionally, if we think about cyber attack, a lot of them happen, at least the high profile ones, they happen to large and very important enterprises because they are the obvious target. Right? They have deeper pocket. If I ask them for money, well, I'll be able to ask for more. Yeah. But now if I think about this type of supply chain vulnerability, if I'm a small enterprise, I may become a target because I'm doing business with a large organization. Hackers are become more sophisticated. What about our defense? So what kind of things can we do in that front?
In terms of defense, I would recommend leaders to do a couple of things. So first, and it's related to the previous discussion about supply chain attacks, you need to diversify the tools that you use to protect your organization. If you're heavily relying on one specific tool and this tool is being hacked, the chances that your organization will recover are very low. Second, you need to foster a culture of cybersecurity. By the end of the day, the bigger the organization is, the more vulnerable it is because it just has more people. If the people are minded to security, whether it's using strong passwords, whether they can take their computers to what access they have, the access management should be handled carefully. I think culture is one thing, diversifying the tools is another. And I think, and it's quite obvious, the third one, you just have dedicated security team that will do that it will think about the scenario of what happened if the organization is breached and chooses the tools and foster this culture.
Now I want to switch gear a little bit and talk about AI. AI is all over the place over the last 2 years, right? Since the launch of ChatGPT. How do you see AI affecting the space of cybersecurity?
So AI affects the space of cybersecurity in a couple of aspects. First, for the hackers, it gives them more platform to attack. So if my organization use AI tools like dedicated agents or bots, it's more tools that can be hacked and it's more ways for hackers to get in. If we talked about supply chain, it's exactly that. So this is one. Other thing hackers can do with AI is just leverage AI to find vulnerabilities, to scan the networks in general, maybe to generate phishing emails so they can just use AI as a tool that will help them to hack. In another perspective, defenders can also use and should use AI to defend themselves. So if attackers use AI to generate phishing emails, I think defenders should use it to detect phishing emails and to scan more regularly the environment to make sure that it's not breached and no hacker is in.
Hackers these days can upgrade their game, right? Using more sophisticated AI tools. We're also seeing deepfake videos. As AI develops, these type of tools are becoming cheaper and cheaper. Do you see AI bring in new forms of, or from the hacker's perspective, more creative forms of risk introduce those type of risk into the system?
AI by itself is a platform. And attackers can leverage this platform to attack in a more creative way. For instance, there is a very trendy technique now that's called prompt injection. So if you have a chatbot, and this chatbot is supposed to answer you based on data, but it should prevent from you to ask specific questions. But I'm a hacker and I managed to ask the question in a way that manipulates the chatbot and I actually can get the information I want. Another example, if I'm now using a chatbot and I feed it with information, I expect the answers to be based on this information. But what happened if a hacker now poison the data that is fed to this agent. So this kind of poisoning can manipulate all the users that use the agent. So this rag poisoning is also new technique that we didn't need to face until very recently.
With all these kinds of new types of attack, how should companies protect themselves against those?
I'll stick to the example you gave about deepfake. A couple of years ago, if I gave you a letter by the CEO, you wouldn't, it could be me writing it by the CEO, but now we obviously know how to deal with it. You know how to verify that this document is by or by not the CEO. And this is a process. So we need to create processes and culture that will help us deal with this kind of attacks. And we need to be aware of what kind of attacks are there. So I think employees need to know what prompt injection is, what rag poisoning is, what deepfake is. If you know it, if it has a name, it probably has a tool that helps you to protect by it. And you need to find the right tool.
It sounds like there is, well, you are from a cybersecurity startup. It sounds like there is a very vibrant ecosystem there that tries to counter all this known vulnerability. So for those type of things, being resilient, being quick in responding, applying common sense, like you said, build a strong cybersecurity culture or in general security culture will help us a lot.
And I think you also need to build on processes of what happened if you're breached by a 0 day. So who should handle this? Is it the security team? Is it the CISO? Do you need to inform the CEO immediately? How do you inform it to the public if it's a public company? So it's also a thing that you must plan in advance, not when it happened to you.
I also think companies, especially if you get deep into the AI space, you need to think a lot about how you integrate AI better with different type of business decisions. For example, how you acquire data. For example, if we think about the lawsuit between OpenAI and New York Times, right? New York Times sued OpenAI for using their data for model training, but without paying them.
Mm-hmm.
In the long run, if we look at the development of a large language model or other type of generative models, everybody acknowledges that we need a huge amount of data.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, we need to set up the correct incentive so that we can acquire sufficient data in a responsible way. We need some regulation, I would say some level of regulation, which governments all over the world, regulators all over the world are working on. But we probably need a little bit more international collaboration. And we also need business leaders to think about creative ways to handle this type of data availability issue, right? As well as what you mentioned before, how do I ensure the data I use for my model training is not poisoned, it's of high quality. In the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think is going to happen in this space? What are the things business leaders should pay most attention to?
In terms of cybersecurity, there are more and more attack surfaces for hackers. And unfortunately, they expand faster because of AI. So hackers can leverage, as we say, AI to hack better, and they just have more platforms to get in. And it's very unfortunate, but hackers need one weakness, one hole in the wall to get in. But the defenders need to make sure there are no holes, that everything is secure. And I think the mindset of searching for specific vulnerabilities and make sure that you're immune for them is not good enough, because we're going to face more and more type of vulnerabilities. So I think the cybersecurity industries and leaders should embrace the fact that they need to leverage AI or any other mechanism to address this issue in a more systematic way. They need to not to be prepared to block and defend from one specific vulnerability or a couple, but a systematic way to make sure they are secured from everything. This is one thing. And the second thing, I think the way to do it, I'm going back to where we started this interview, is the human factor. They must foster a culture of innovation, and they need to make sure all the employees in the organization are aware of those risks, are aware that this attack surface is expanding very fast, and that they need to be very cautious about it, whether it's with processes, with the rules the organization enforces.
Now you mentioned the cyber attack sort of surface is expanding, and it sounds like companies need to spend a lot of resources protecting themselves. But on the other hand, companies are also facing tremendous amount of pressure for pushing out new product, for different innovation. You worked as a startup yourself.
Yeah.
How do you see companies? How should they best balance this? Right, between innovation and security?
The answer depends on the industry, on the size of the organization. For instance, I've joined the startup when we were less than 20 people. So we didn't have the budget, but we didn't really have the need to defend like a huge bank. So what we did is we gave our R&D department the responsibility for the cybersecurity to defend. But in a way, the potential hackers that want to hack us are not national state hackers and not group of hackers, are probably script kiddies, like some people who recently learned how to hack and they want to try their skills. Now when we are more than 400 people, we need to be more organized. So we have a dedicated team, we have a CISO, a Chief Information and Security Officer, and they are responsible to make sure that we use the right tools for a software company, and they're responsible for fostering the culture of cybersecurity, which means they tell us when we need to change the password. Every quarter we need to do, for instance, cybersecurity test, just to remind us what we're allowed and not allowed to do, and things like that.
Even with your own internal capability, arguably you are more capable than most of the organizations in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet you still leverage on external capabilities.
Yeah.
Right. It's probably fair to say there is no company, no organizations in the world who have the internal capability just do this by themselves. So there is always sort of a mixture of internal and external resources.
Some of the organizations in the world will have very specific needs and very deep pockets might implement their own cybersecurity solutions. But they need to be aware is that it's very, very expensive and it should be very, very tailored to a specific need. So it's not a very common case.
I want to talk a little bit about digital risk that is beyond cybersecurity. There is an upcoming concept called digital trust. Yeah. Right. And the idea is whenever I use a digital system or digital service, as a customer, I have the expectation that my information and my data are not just secure, but they are used in an ethical way. How do you think different organizations at different places in their own value chain should handle digital trust? How would they actually earn customers' trust? In
terms of leaders in organizations, you have and you handle a lot of data. And what you must do, you must be aware that who is exposed to the data, whether within the organization or external vendors. And if there are external vendors that are exposed, you need to make sure what data they're exposed to, and you need to build a trust or have a contract about what they can do and cannot do with the data. The key here is continuous learning. And I think for the leader's perspective, they need to be, again, very aware of what are not the risks of today, but the risks of tomorrow. Before we close, if I ask you to provide one specific suggestion for business leaders in the space of cybersecurity, what would that be? Keep up with technology. Always make sure that you know what are the new trends, what are the new technologies. We talked about the attack surface. how the attack surface is expanding, whether it's AI, whether it's something else. So you need to be aware of this and make sure you don't have one plan and then you stick to it. Revise it once in a while. You need to make sure that you're up to date all the time.
So it sounds like continuous learning
Yes.
is one of the most important things to do,
Yes.
right? Especially as the technology front is evolving.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Gal, for all the great insights today.
Thank you, Alex.